If this is your first time at Colorado Career Connectors, we'd like to welcome you. And I'm really excited about this topic because as my clients or people in our community have gone through career transition, one of the biggest fears they have is around finances. How do you align finances? How do you lean into your finances? And just that fear that comes up around this. This is why Shelly Schell has been a sponsor of Colorado Career Connectors for a year now. And her advice and her just thought leadership on these topics are top notch. And she's a certified divorce financial planner. She has the leader of PRISM Financial, and I know several people that she advises for, and that includes me. So she is really, really helpful in so many of these topics. So we're excited to have her today. Can you see my screen? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. While it's loading, for those of you who I have not met, my name is Shelly. I started Colorado Career Connectors in March of 2021, and we bring you very robust topics and content that is very important for your personal and professional developments. I'm an executive coach and also recruiter. So I wear two different hats that sits on the side of interviewing, coaching, resume coaching, but much more onboarding and really performance coaching on the job. And Shelly's focus today is on something that I know I had a lot of fear around, and that's why I have asked her to partner with us today. If you are looking to deepen your knowledge within getting your mindset at a different level, or having a deliberate strategy, or executing your job search at a different level, this is my framework, and I'd love to chat with you at any point. Yvette, if you want to just throw where they can get a free lead generator to provide more information on this. I'm not going to start or talk a lot about this, but there's a free 14-page document that will help you be very mindful and linear about your strategic job search. These are just some of my kudos that I've received. My clients received 1.7 million in increases in 2021, and that number actually was above 2 million last year during a time of COVID and transition and, the Great Resignation. So would love to help any of you explore your next chapter for professional clarity, confidence, and courage. And Yvette, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, sorry, I was typing in our chat here, welcoming our guests. Yeah, so I think I'm the director of operations for this group.
Yvette helps me with everything, websites, branding.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's awesome. I usually don't make her do the introductions. So
yeah, no, it's okay. And I realized I didn't update this information on the slide deck because I think we created this previously, but my new website is 20milecreative.com, and I'll drop in my LinkedIn as well in the chat.
Awesome. If you have not yet subscribed to cocareerconnectors.com, which is now .org, please do. We have newsletters with tips and lots of community events, and our topics do vary. Today we're talking about finances. In the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking with Tanya Martinez, who's also an executive career partner of mine, and we're going to talk about how do you find your next chapter and what does that look like for you. Shelly, I'm going to turn it over to you. Like I've said to everyone here, Shelly is the co-founder of PRISM Financial Strategies, and she's a registered investment Advisory Group. Her firm is registered. She provides financial education and solutions for individuals and families. And Shelly, thank you for being a sponsor and such a great help to my family from a financial perspective as well.
Hi. Well, it won't let me, can you allow me to share my screen?
Okay.
Okay.
I
hope everybody's good today. Let me give this a try. Oh, disable. Okay, so let me try it again. It still will not let me share. It says host disabled, participant screen sharing. Sorry.
Yeah, you should be good now, Shelly.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
The other Shelly.
Okay. Yep. There's two Shellys on the line.
Shelly,
It makes it
powers.
confusing. Okay. Activate. Yes. Twin powers activate. And I actually have twins, so that is pretty funny. You know, we're always activating a twin power. Yep. Can you see my PowerPoint, everybody? Web of Financial Influence. Okay. So what this is, I'm going to go through these screens, and of course you guys can type in chat or just ask questions as we go along. This is really, I want it to be kind of a informal and informative environment where you can ask questions, because this is kind of a new topic that I like to explore with my clients, but also put out there for others to think about and learn about as you start to get engaged with your money a little differently. So this is my bio. You can get that online, or we can send you these slides afterwards. So I'm not going to get into the bio too much, but I have been in the investment industry for 25 years. And what brings me to this topic is particularly the fact that I talk so much to individuals about their spending and their investing and their goals and how do they achieve all this, right? And what the connection really seems to be is once you start to make a true alignment that is centered around your beliefs and your values, and you intentionally think about those actions, the spending, for example, the investing, the goals, where you want to put your money, when you start to really make an intentional decisions, that's when it really comes together for most people. They don't just, it just doesn't become this passive money that sits in a bank or in a 401k or a brokerage account. It becomes something that has more meaning. And when it becomes something with more meaning, that's when we start to get more engagement and we have a better outcome for ourselves, whatever that ends up being for you and your goals. So let's start out with, do you know how your financial choices really impact the world around you? And this dynamic of the web of financial influence is significant. We are part of a financial ecosystem, and you may not think about it, but that's what we're gonna get into today. What we are missing by not being aligned with our spending and our investment choices really impacts that financial influence. And I'm just going to give you a little thought on that right now is, every day you go out and you spend money, right? And they may be the reoccurring purchases that you're making online through your subscriptions, or it could be the, a habit you have at the coffee shop once a week or twice a week on your way to work, whatever that is. But it's even the small dollars that we're spending on a regular basis really impacts the web of influence that we have as consumers. And what we're trying to do is align that with our values so that we can make better choices that have more of a far-reaching impact, that are aligned to us, right? And to the communities in which we live. So I love this. So I've done a lot of work around this as a financial planner. I do a lot of planning with individuals, and we go through those questionnaires. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with some of that stuff. Even if you haven't done them with a planner yourself, you've probably seen them online. But so when I was going through this to help lay out the format of what I really mean by all this, this quote from Gandhi came up, and it was like, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And he's on the rupee. He is on the dollar, or the currency of India. And so when it related so much to what I'm talking about, because through our, and it's not exactly specifically what they were talking about necessarily, but for me, what this means is through our spending, we can be the change we wish to see in the world. And in order to do that, we just have to think more intentionally and start to align through our values. So this is one of my favorite quotes out there in anything that you believe, whatever it is you believe. We start with the small things in life, and in this case, through our spending. Okay, so the money web. As consumers, we make impactful choices financially, and we can change the world through those. As I mentioned a couple of things before. What are the results of our spending? What does it mean when we go and have our, $5 a week or multi times a week coffee? That company that we're spending that money with, what does that mean? I mean, we're creating this impact even when we don't think about it. Who gets to control the big dollar? So do you go to a local coffee shop that's family owned, or do you go to a big corporate conglomerate? And there's nothing wrong with either one, as long as you're intentionally aligned with that and you know what that means for what you believe in and what's important to you in your community. How are they influencing your future purchases? That really is, goes back to, again, that financial web. When you give your dollars, even in small amounts, to a company, they're taking that money and making an impact with it. Even locally, or maybe they don't even do it locally. Maybe it's only on a global level, but that impact is pretty significant. Those dollars add up. What are they doing, with the massive amounts of money and resources that you give them? We are giving them the power. This is the money web and the financial influence. So the big questions I like to tackle are, why are we giving the power with our money through our spending? Why are we doing that? Are we doing that with alignment? It is your choice on how you spend. I'm going to show you some ways. But I always go back to this one. And I do this with myself. I do this with my family. To keep it real. How are we making these choices? Is it the marketing? Is it the packaging? How are we ultimately being sold? And is there an agenda from companies? Of course, that's marketing. But how do we stop and be more intentional around these choices and take that power away from being marketed to, for example? Okay. So I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the money multiplier effect, but that's an economic term, and it has to do with when the central bank puts money into the system. It starts with $1 and it ends up in gazillions of dollars, for example. But I like to think of this also and it's very relevant, is our money multiplier impact. Every dollar we spend, right? Even referencing the few dollars at the coffee shop, to the online purchases we make or the subscriptions that add up over a month, we are making a significant impact through those dollars, right? And it is up to us to step back and think about that alignment, first of all. And that's what we're going to talk about. But the money multiplier, you may not think small dollars add up, but they do. And when I, as an advisor for 25 years, people will say, well, I don't have any money to manage. I don't have any money to invest. But it starts with our spending. And even the little dollars that we're spending, if you're able to go in and think about that, you can see how this money multiplier effect can make a bigger impact. And then if you have any investments or any savings, it goes and aligns with the banks that you choose to invest in. Are they local banks? Are they big banks? How are you being treated? How do you think those corporations or those companies are bringing their dollars back into the community to do the good that you want to see in your life and in your community's life? This is a very wordy slide. And of course, you guys will get copies of these slides because we don't have a ton of time. And I really like to get into the money multiplier effect. But this walks you through, the difference between individuals and businesses, the process of spending and income generation, and examples of what it means to spend locally versus on a larger scale. But overall, spending by individuals and businesses is critical. It's an economic driver, and it doesn't matter where you think you are in this world of economies, we all make such an impact. And the more we start to realize that our dollars make a difference and that we can change our communities with the way that we spend and then invest, these slides on the money multiplier effect will make a lot more of an impact on the greater world that we live in. Okay, so how is this relevant for you? Okay, so we're here with career connectors, and you guys, I don't know where everybody is in their situation, if you're making a change or possibly thinking about it, but why is this relevant? I mean, finances are relevant all the time, but there's times of transition, right? That people really start to come out and think about their money in a more meaningful and personal way. And that's what I've seen over the years. And so obviously, if you're thinking about changing a career, you could be looking at downsizing, so you're not working so much and maybe not making as much. Or you may be in another situation where you're like, okay, I'm ready to up level my career and I'm going to be making more money. And how do I want that to relate to the way that I spend and the way I think about my money and the choices I'm able to make around that? And that's why this topic is really, truly relevant to whatever your situation is and wherever you are in your career. Okay, so consumers. I lay this out in two ways. I'm an investment advisor, financial planner, right? You're going to hear that a lot during this because I want to differentiate the importance of what I'm trying to teach today. I believe you have such an impact that we all do as a consumer, right? The power we have as a consumer is the first place we start. And we all can just stop there and say, okay, how do I make a difference? I start to think about the way I spend my money in alignment. Has any of you ever heard the term, put your money where your mouth is? That is exactly what I want you to start thinking about throughout this presentation, and take it with you when we're done, giving you some little tools to think about. Because where we put our, when we put our money where our mouth is, instead of our habitual spending or being marketed to or being sold things, we really start to feel like we have more choices. And then those choices relate to our investments, because when you think about the companies you're spending your money with every day, just on a regular basis, where do you pay your, what bank has your mortgage? Who do you pay your rent to, for example? Where do you get your hair done? Every single thing we do with our money comes back to, how are we investing our money? Are we investing in those companies that we're also spending our money with? And do we want to? Because you may not want to invest with those companies, and they may be owned in your 401k and you don't even know it. So it starts to create this web of financial impact, not just in the world we live in, but in your own world, where you start to see, wow, I didn't really think about it like that before. I thought of it kind of as, here's my spending, I have a budget, I have to live within this. And then here's my 401k and my investment accounts, which are for down the road when I retire. I don't even have time to think about that. But they actually are very well interwoven. Okay, so let's kick it off with this. And of course, you're going to get copies of the slides, so you don't have to take notes, but if you feel like it, this is where we're going to start. When you align your values and money, you make your money more intentional. You make your choices more intentional. So I like to start here. Start with a monthly tracker. You're going to track the top 5 places you shop at in a month. And this is, for most people, this is pretty common. You go to the same grocery stores, you go to the same retailers, whether they're online or they're brick and mortar, wherever it is that you shop, pharmacies. Take a notepad, journal this down, and start to think about where you spend the bulk of your time shopping throughout the month. And now pick the top 10 brands that you purchase. Okay. This one's kind of fun because you don't just have to do this when you're in the store, but what's in your cabinet? Open up your kitchen cabinets and look and see the companies that you're buying the most often, right? Whether it's for cereals or for beauty products, whatever it is, start to identify the top brands that you buy most. Another one is service providers. This one's a little bit different because most of the time our service providers are going to be local. They're going to be a locally owned business, a hair salon or something of that nature. But you'll also start to look at, oh, well, what about the hair products I buy? And am I buying them from the local hair salon? Because I can, and then that puts the money back locally, if that makes sense, versus buying those hair products at a grocery store. And then online subscription services. Oh, one other thing I want to mention with service providers, this also includes your doctors. And even if you're not, hopefully you're not going to the hospital very often, but if you just happen to notice the hospitals that are near you that you would utilize, or the urgent care centers, just determining what those service providers are locally near you, because you'll be surprised when we start researching those companies to see who actually owns them and how local they really are. When the bigger the names, the more often you see them, the more likely they're owned by a big company. And then this one's always fun because I try to revisit this, at least every 6 months with clients and myself. What are the top 5 online subscription services you use? Because we tend to sign up for things, right? And we get specials and then we kind of forget they're there. But there's so many of them that are owned by the same companies, for example. So you just want to kind of identify the top subscription services that you're utilizing as well. Okay. Now, places that you shop, do they align with your values? Are they local or are they a chain? Do the top brands you spend money on, are they aligned with your values? And do you even know? I think this is the hardest thing to identify for a lot of people. So we'll touch on some of the ways you can get into that as well, but how you're going to figure that out, and do you even know? And are the companies you spend money with locally owned or publicly traded? One of the things that you can, a lot of balance. Most of the companies out there are big, right? The big. We don't have a mom and pop typically like hardware store anymore. Although, for example, Ace Hardware is franchised, where like a Home Depot is a publicly traded company. So just making those distinctions on, you may not always find what you want at Home Depot. So you go to Ace Hardware and you get that balance effect, the local owned guy versus the big chain. Now, if you do shop at Home Depot, do you actually own that stock in your portfolio? Is that a company that you'd want to invest in? Versus it's kind of like comparison would be Lowe's. So you kind of can go and decide which company do I like better? And it could just be location, right? There's a Home Depot up the street for me and the Lowe's takes me 20, 30 minutes to get to. But when we think about this, we start to create a conscious association with our money and our spending between the companies and what they're doing. And then we can start to create some more accountability with those companies when we are a shareholder. Okay, so here's some steps for alignment. We start with, you create a budget. This is pretty standard. You may already have your budgets in place, but you create a budget that reflects your values. And I'm going to talk more about values later on. So, and how you do that. But you can reallocate and create your budget aligned with your values based on what that looks like from some more activities we're going to be doing. You need to research those companies. So once you've identified, like we did, the top companies that you're spending with, start to do a little research around those. So, for example, if sustainability is important to you, you may want to look for products that use sustainable materials or eco-friendly packaging, things like that. Shopping local and small. Consider shopping at your local stores. We've already talked about that maybe have a little bit more of a community involvement. Now, some big corporations do as well, and they give back to the local communities. So it's not that they're bad. It's just a different approach. And in this day and age we live in, truthfully, it comes down to a balance of both of those. Donating to causes that you care about. So you may not be able to necessarily shop at all the places that you want to reflect your values, but you can create a way to donate through your budgeting that's in alignment with your big picture, your income, your needs, but also your values. hopefully you'll be able to see how all this will help you align and get more involved and engaged in what your money has to offer. It's not just a bank account, but it's a resource that you can use to make a difference in your life.
Hey, Shelly.
So,
I had put in the chat that I love shopping at Trader Joe's and Sprouts, and I'd love to get any other comments on where people love to shop locally or that align with their values.
Oh, I see the chat now. Sorry, I didn't have it open. I just opened it.
That's okay. Jolene or VK or Kelly, any thoughts from you? Yvette?
Oh, yeah.
So I initially was thinking of like I go to King Soopers, but through that more of an explanation, one thing I try to do is whenever I'm buying a gift for someone, there's a gift shop in my neighborhood called Aspen Lane. And I know I spend more than what I budget as gifts for friends, but I just feel like to support a local business owner is important. And so I've kind of vowed to do everything I can to buy gifts locally.
Nice. There's a group called Second Act Women, and they have a whole section where you can shop locally, shop women of color or organizations, the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce, same thing. And so, Shelly, I really think that more people are doing this conscious spending as consumers, spending your money where your values are aligned. So that so ERG or environmental
ESG. I have that. Yeah.
Because ERG is employee referral and employee resource for diversity. So yes, ESG, which is environmental sustainability and governance, is huge. So I just thought we should take a minute and see how that aligned with our audience.
Oh, I love that. And those are great examples. I mean, and I take it so far as like, even if I'm shopping, for example, at a King Soopers, right? When I go into King Soopers, they a lot of times now have local products, right? So they have the products that are, regional, for example. So that's always helpful because then that, like peaches, Palisade peaches. I mean, there's so many different things. I mean, it's a certain time of year, of course, not now, but that's one that comes as one of my favorites. But you think about things like that, and even though they're big companies and they're not, owned locally, they still have a big impact in our communities because they employ locally, and that's that money multiplier effect, obviously. But it does. There's so many different ways, and the more we have access to communities and organizations to share, like Shelly mentioned, Second Act Women as a resource, the easier it becomes, quite frankly. So these are the 5 personal factors that I really believe, in my experience, can really help with your financial decisions. And, in traditional financial planning, we talk about, okay, tell me about your resources. Tell me about your fears. Tell me about, what you relate to risk in investing. Tell me about your goals. How long do you need this money to last? Or what do you need this money to do for you? But if you don't start with your beliefs and your lifestyle choices and align it with your values, then your job and your age are, they're going to be there. But these are the pieces, these first 3 items, and that's why I put them first. If you do not connect your beliefs and your values to your lifestyle choices, and lifestyle choices I use in a replacement of budget, you get to choose the lifestyle you're living by the choices you're making with your spending. And it's kind of like, I'm just going to point out Jolene here. When you say you often spend a little bit more on those gifts that you're buying locally, but maybe you balance that by getting better deals at some of the big retailers. And it overall works out to give you that lifestyle balance with your budget that's still in alignment, right? But it feels good and it makes a bigger difference. And you make so many more personal connections. Okay. So I always like to do this worksheet with my clients, but it's starting with core values. And there's, you'll journal on the top 10 of your core values to get kicked off, right? So here's an example of some of the words that I use to help identify core values. And of course, this changes over time. So this isn't something, your core values may change as your life changes. You may be more into travel now, or that may be a goal for your future than, say, personal development is today. So this is a great tool to continue kind of journaling through your values to help identify, again, the connection with money. So here's just a worksheet that I provide, again, just as an example, to show you the top 10. And your words may be different. You may know these already, but for those of you who haven't done an actual core value, mind dump, it's a fun place to start. And just as a side note, I'm not the one who certainly invented creating a core value mind dump. So I know there's a lot of classes out there that you can take also that kind of get you in that frame of mind, but it's a great experience when it comes to thinking about money, and one that really does help center you wherever you are in your financial journey to get more connected and feel less anxiety and fear or uncertainty around finances. So what I like to term as start to be a money maverick. So this word, when I think about this word, I'm like, oh, maybe people think of it in a different way. What do people think of maverick? Well, these are some definitions that I was able to come up with. And maverick really can refer to a person who's independent-minded, unconventional, and often challenging traditional ways of thinking or doing things. And that's exactly what I want you to think about when you think about your money. I want you to start to release whatever it is from the past that you don't like about the way you think about money, and moving into a new mindset as a maverick, and take on this this belief system that your money is a tool and a resource to make a difference in your world and the world you live. And it doesn't even mean that you need to make more. I mean, hopefully that's, what the goal is, if that's what you want it to be, right? Not for everybody, but whatever those dollars that you have, aligning those in a more intentional way, as I keep reiterating, will give you so much more peace of mind when it comes to the spending, the income needs that you have, as well as the risk and the volatility in markets, quite frankly. Okay, so what is the number you need to live your lifestyle? And this is a question that I have a lot of people coming to me to help identify, is how much do I need to get to this goal or to live the life I want to live? And how do I do that? Well, first of all, I've identified what the money maverick is. When you become a money maverick, you set aside the fear and you move forward into a place of exploration that helps you realize that whatever the finances you have today, they can work for you and in alignment for your beliefs and the goals that you have for yourself, if you just step back and take the time to manage through those, instead of saying, I got to do it a certain way because that's the way I've always done it, or I don't have enough, those limiting beliefs. That's not at all what it's about. It's about moving forward and not being a part of the herd mentality. They always say, be the maverick that's not, don't follow the herd, for example. And that's traditionally what happens in finances and managing money. When we see markets go up and markets go down, that's because the herd's following it up and the herd's following it down. And it's not that that's still not, is going to happen, because it's like there's like trillions of dollars, but we can make better choices when we have our own voice and our maverick comes forward. So know your numbers. So this is just an example of a way to think about how much risk and reward you need to take with the resources that you have. And this goes back to when you identify those type of companies that you're spending your money with, okay? And more often than not, people say, oh, I'm spending too much. I know I need to invest more. Or I need to save more. That's just the norm. It's not that I save too much, but I don't know what to do with it. And not that that doesn't happen, but regardless, when you say to yourself, where do I spend my money first? What are those companies I'm buying? Would I invest in them? Do I own those in investment? And do I want to own those? That is when that maverick mentality or that herd, it doesn't matter what the rest of the herd's doing, because I know how much I need to make for myself. I know what it needs to feel like, and I'm going to do it my way through my own learning and knowledge, with or without somebody else, to help me align to my goals. So when people ask you how you feel about your money, I want you to get to the point where you can say, I feel like I'm a maverick with my money. I feel I can step out and make choices that are truly aligned with who I am and what I believe in. So that is all about purpose-driven choices. Our knowledge, confidence, and engagement, which we've talked some about. Social responsibility, community, what's in your cabinet. This is kind of just a chart that shows how it all flows together. Align your needs, wants, and wishes with your spending, saving, and investing. Okay, so this comes, Shelly, you brought this, up a few minutes ago with what kind of companies you guys shop at and where you buy. But some of the ways to identify the companies that you're buying, for example, what is a B Corp? Has anybody heard of a B Corp? Okay, yeah. So, it is a company that is specifically created for profit, but is, it's about creating a structure that is positive for business and the environment, and it has full transparency around it. And one of the companies, and it doesn't matter if you shop there or not, I just like to mention it. And I can only see a few people on here, so I don't know how many women versus men are here. But this company, if anybody's heard of the Gap, for example, right? It's been around forever. Well, Athleta is owned by the Gap. Athleta is a B Corp, and they advertise all over their store that they're a B Corp. They give out, and I think it's admirable, because when I go in there with my kids or any store like this, I like to point out things that they can relate to, but that I also feel are teaching elements. And they give out reusable bags. And so they truly do align, and they're a higher price point company, right? But they do align with what this B Corp stands for. And so, but there's so many of these out there. So when you start to just think about those companies, when we did that exercise before, you can go back and research some of who they are and what they stand for. Oh, yeah. So Shelly put in some of those in here that are in here. Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, Warby Parker. I feel better when I get my glasses through Warby Parker now. So ESG, this is what Shelly, you mentioned earlier. This is an acronym for environmental social governance, okay? And it's been around for quite a while. And in investing, I will say that there are ESG strategies. So again, depending on what your values are from an investor perspective, these ESG funds make sure that these companies follow certain criteria. But let me stop and say, it is not the be-all end-all to everything you want in a social environmental company either. There is some strong marketing, if you would believe it, in Wall Street. And ESG has taken on as far as the investments, has taken on a very marketed mentality. And so there's a lot of other options that may not be ESG tagged because of the expense. So the big companies will align with the ESG, if like a Apple or a Google, for example, but some smaller companies may not be able to because they just aren't going to spend the money, but they are ESG. So there's different ways to invest in companies that are socially responsible and that have, an environmental, or a specific approach to investing that aligns with your belief system that may not have the ESG tagline. So just to bring up some options that you can look at, but they're not limited to those as well. So just be aware of that. How many of you have heard of ESG? I know, Shelly, you have, yeah. And it's becoming something that's much more, out there. So I was actually, this is kind of interesting. I was just at a mining conference, which is completely out of my norm of realm to get that into the weeds of industry. But I happened to be invited, and the whole theme was about moving forward, with EV cars and things and batteries and things of that nature. Where's all this coming from, right? Those are mined. They come out of our earth. And the biggest hesitation for these miners has been that people think of a miner and they go, oh my gosh, you're not environmentally, you're horrible for the earth. You're digging a big hole and you're impacting the water and things like that. But believe it or not, for them to even be able to get anywhere and to create any of these environmental products that we need to become more sustainable as a world, and diversified in our energy resources, they have this huge ESG responsibility, and they take it very seriously. And it is becoming something that you will hear a lot more about throughout all industries. So I think I skipped one. Here we go. So, when we look at aligning a financial picture with your values and goals, it takes into consideration all of these aspects. Your web of financial influence, it truly impacts so much more than you would even imagine. When you talk to your friends about what they're doing, the environment, whatever it is, your legacy, how you create a legacy with your finances, how you protect your family through insurance, different companies that you would work with. You want to make sure all of these are in alignment with what you truly believe in, or else what I have seen is that's when things unravel and you become unaligned, means that you end up getting in with somebody shouldn't be working with, or you shouldn't be investing in, right? So just something to consider, how all of these really do impact your web of financial influence. Everywhere you spend your money and all aspects of full financial planning are all interwoven. There was another slide. This is the other slide I meant to talk about first, but it doesn't matter. So here's your values, right? Spending, investing, your values and your belief. We've talked about these things, but this is a good representation again of all of this kind of together. Publicly traded, privately owned. Are they sustainable? Are they environmental? Do they invest back in your community? How does it impact the global world that we live in? Because that's certainly, globalization is a real thing. Most of the companies, when we do investments for clients and we talk about how much their money's invested in the US versus internationally, these companies that are US companies are invested internationally already, right? So you have an international global perspective in a portfolio when you own a company like Apple, for example. And all of this comes back to how you manage your money on a regular basis. And this is a circle. It's never ending. It never changes, just like the values. You're always going to want to update your values, at least on a biannual basis, and see how it's making the impact for your decisions, your goals and your objectives, how the values are actually aligning with the investment selections that you have. And can you control them? Because in big 401ks, it's very difficult to say, I want to own these kind of companies. You can't do that at this point, but to create balance, which I believe as an advisor helps everyone kind of meet all their goals in life. Creating balance means if you can't do that with your 401k or some of the investment choices you have, you can do it with your spending, right? So you can see how you still can have an impact and allow your values to come through, even if you can't make specific decisions on things like a retirement account. I always use this slide and I just come back to this. So for me, what I do every day is very much a logic-based, finance numbers. And when we can take our left brain and our right brain and combine them into, a more connected, and this is true in anything, but this is really back to money. When we think outside the box about our money and we think about it in an imaginative way, and that's what I'm trying to get back to. When you get creative with your money and you start to align what's important to you and you listen to your instincts, right? But you also manage it with, a conscious approach with finance, right? Like these are solid companies that have a chance to give me the returns that I need for my, need my money to make. Or that I want my money to make, they really do come together to give you a total balance. And most of the time, what I've seen is most people only think about money from the, the logical side, and they crunch them and they do that. And the reason that I feel like they do that is because that's the way our society wants us to think about money. But the more we start to look in our cabinets, when we start to think about the way we spend and we start to mix that with the way we manage our money and we spend our money with more of that imagination and our intuition, the more successful you'll become. And I truly have seen this over time with the people I've worked with, just in general, and the companies I have seen migrate towards a more intentional use, whatever that is. If they align with social governance, the more they align with their employees, again, back to wherever you choose to work, when you work with a company, or I have, that when I work with a company that's aligned with who I am and believes in what I believe in, I want to work harder for them, or I want to make a difference for that company, even if I'm not the owner, for example. And it's the same thing with your investments and those companies that you ultimately will invest in. So, I mean, truly believe you can have it all. Okay. I mean, we really can. And knowledge, again, it is the base of everything we do, but you don't have to get so in the weeds with it that you feel overwhelmed, because you can Google these companies until you're blue in the face, and you can find good and bad on a lot of companies, right? Because there's two sides to everything. But it comes down to knowing who you are, knowing what's important to you at the forefront, and knowing what you need your money to do for you will help you find that balance and allow you to create that, that money experience and the alignment between your spending and the investments that you have, that gives you clarity and perspective for the long term, not just short term, but long term. So things that you can help, doing certainly, and getting there as you prepare and go through this is obviously do the worksheets, and revisit some of those. Find mentors. So if there's anybody out there that you are, you think has or just ask around, even if you don't know if they're a mentor, what their experience is with money, or trust referrals from friends and family, or join women's groups who can help you learn. And, Shelly obviously could be a good resource for that as well through Career Connectors, because there's certainly a lot of resources that have like-minded people that can help with this as well. This was just another example. This is for purpose. So once you get your vision statements together, then you can start aligning your purpose. And that's when we get to the purpose statement, like traveling the world, for example, then you know that your money in 5 years, there's a bucket that's set aside to align with traveling the world, for example. And you can sit back and say, okay, well, I know what I need to do with this money to get to travel the world for a year, as an example. And I'm going to invest my money to do this in these companies that I believe are aligned with what I really believe in, whether it's local connections, or, I mean, you could do real estate if it's being locally engaged or something. But making these connections and not just having money that's set aside for the future goals that, that are 23 years down the road, for example, or whatever the time frame is, helps you to, again, make it more relevant, right? And when we're relevant and engaged in something, that's when we find more beneficial action. I know that personally. That's a duplicate. All right, so that's kind of the slides for today. I didn't want to get too in the weeds, but are there any other questions or anything else that anybody wants to share? Or
What Shelly's talking about with women's groups is super important. And before I chose a financial advisor, it took me like 2 years, to be honest with you. And there's lots of them out there. And I was very fearful around money. I still am. Anybody else have that fear? To be honest, I had to listen to a lot of advice, and I just love this idea of aligning with your values. And I've seen other clients of Shelly's be really successful in aligning that value alignment. So we have some things in the chat going on. I have a money mindset coach along with what Shelly is talking about with Money Maverick. Her name's Bianca McGee, and she's been super helpful with getting through lots of how do I pay this off? How do I even think about traveling, right? Especially through transition. So it really does help to align. And I'm seeing some things in the chat. VK dropped off, but KFC, Burger King, or Starbucks, Coke, Heineken, Nike, or Louise. I'm not sure of some of these. Who loves Netflix? I'm binge watching right now.
I know.
Yes.
But what's funny is let me just kind of say that, like Amazon, for example, has Prime. Okay. So when we go and talk about, do we want to buy Netflix as a stock or do we want to buy Amazon? And Amazon offers Prime as well as their subscription service, and Netflix is only streaming. You think about the diversification within Amazon versus Netflix. So just thoughts, just thinking about those two streaming services, which honestly, I use both as well, but they're so different in what they represent, because Amazon is this Goliath retailer as well.
That's really interesting because I know people who will not use Amazon because of the sustainability issues of all of, you can just get Amazon every 20 minutes of your day. And that's a lot of packing and like waste of people's time and money and resources. So,
and the flip side of that too, though, I've had people say, but then if I go and drive to find those products that Amazon can deliver, is that making a worse impact? So these are just some really dynamic questions. I mean, 20 minutes every 20 minutes is a little extreme.
I meant like daily. I know people who
but you can absolutely. But see, this is where I really think that you get into these conversations that we learn from, right? Because I don't know which is better. Is it better for me to drive around everywhere or to have something delivered? What is the actual impact on the environment? And are we forcing some of these companies like Amazon to have a cleaner footprint? And they are an ESG company, to have a cleaner footprint if we stop spending at them, so.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Shelly, for your insight and your thought leadership. We really appreciate it. Any other questions for Shelly? No? All right, we will be back in March, which is just 2 days from now, if you can believe that. That's insane. We've got Tanya Martinez coming up with how do you find your next chapter, and be on the lookout for our newsletter, which is coming out in the first couple of weeks of March. Thank you for joining us today, and have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.